Alright guys, welcome back to Unit 3. This is Day 8, I believe. So, we recently were talking about Hamilton's economic plan and all of the different pieces and how controversial it was. If you remember, I said the debt bill is controversial because of the bond controversy and because of the states all having different debt. The taxes are controversial because taxes are always controversial. And then the bank piece is pretty controversial because Jefferson and people who think like him don't think that the Constitution gives the federal government the power to create a national bank. The bank argument actually all revolves around how these guys interpret the Constitution. There are two ways to interpret the Constitution. The first is strict construction. That's Thomas Jefferson. He's a strict constructionist. The other is loose construction. That's Alexander Hamilton. He's a loose constructionist. Strict construction means that you can only do what the document specifically says the government can do. If the document says that we can control trade, then we can control trade. If the document doesn't say we can control trade, then we cannot control trade. Loose construction, people like Alexander Hamilton would see this as long as it doesn't say that we can't control trade, then we can. As long as we're not specifically violating the Constitution, then, we can take any reasonable action that we think helps the country. And that all really revolves around the 10th Amendment. In the 10th Amendment, there's a clause called the Necessary and Proper Clause. And essentially what it says is that the government can do anything it deems necessary and proper. Alexander Hamilton hears this and he thinks, okay, whatever we think is right, proper for the country, necessary, that's what we can do. Thomas Jefferson hears this and he sees, we should only be doing things that are absolutely necessary, things that are 100% crucial to the continuation of the republic and our democracy and all of this stuff. So every argument that Hamilton and Jefferson are going to have, and there's going to be plenty of arguments, they're all going to come from this 10th Amendment and this interpretation of the Constitution argument. Unfortunately for Hamilton, unfortunately for Jefferson, he's not the Secretary of Treasury. He does not have much say in our economic affairs. It's really up to Washington and Hamilton. Now, obviously, Jefferson's going to pitch all of his problems. We want a small central government. We don't want a national bank because it's going to be too powerful. But unfortunately, Washington is going to side with Hamilton, and he's going to sign into law the creation of the first bank of the United States. As for Hamilton's liquor tax, people are going to be very unhappy about it, specifically farmers. Farmers and frontiersmen already resented the wealthier classes of the East. People out west and people in the South are already a little bit more resentful of the Northeast area type of folks. They think that, the government favors them and they have more power and more voice in government, which is true. So in 1794, farmers are going to violently react to Hamilton's excise tax on liquor, and this is why. Many of them used their surplus grain every season to turn into whiskey, and then they would sell that whiskey, and then that money would actually get them through the rest of the year. A lot of times, the whiskey actually generated more money than just selling the grain. But now, because of this new whiskey tax, they won't be able to make the money off of the whiskey like they could before. So these farmers are just going to lose it. They begin attacking tax collectors. They burn farms and homes of anyone who gives away the locations of hidden stills. Over 2,000 farmers are threatening to completely destroy Pittsburgh. So Washington needs to crush this rebellion quick. If you remember the last rebellion we talked about, it was Shays' Rebellion. And the federal government couldn't do anything to stop it. And that's because the Articles of Confederation were weak and didn't give it any power to. But it's a new day and a new form of government, and we've got the Constitution, and that totally gives George Washington the power to handle this situation. So as the commander-in-chief of the military, he's going to call up militia from Virginia, Maryland, and New Jersey, giving him a unit of over 13,000 troops. And then Washington himself, with Alexander Hamilton by his side, they will get on horseback and lead these troops into Pennsylvania to crush this rebellion. Washington will be the only president to ride into battle while president. So when all these 2,000 farmers are faced with these 13,000 troops and George Washington on a horse coming to kick their butts, they will quickly retreat and surrender, and Washington will be able to prove that the Constitution is working and that the president is now capable of handling situations like this without spilling a drop of blood, which is pretty impressive. Now, the relationship between Jefferson and Hamilton is so strained that we're going to see the formation of our first two political parties in the United States, the Democratic Republicans, sometimes called the Jeffersonian Republicans, and the Federalists. This is going to be our major two-party system. We've got guys like John Jay, John Adams. They are all Federalists supporting Alexander Hamilton. And then we've got guys like James Madison, James Monroe, who we'll talk about later. They're all going to be Democratic Republicans. Federalists support a strong central government. Democratic Republicans support a weaker central government. Now, the last thing that Hamilton and Jefferson are going to butt heads over in the cabinet, as while they're working with George Washington, is going to be the French Revolution. The French monarch is overthrown in the 1780s, in 1789 actually, and when I say overthrown, I mean he was drug out into the street and beheaded, and so is his entire family. French Revolution is quite bloodier than the rest of history. It's definitely a lot different from the American Revolution. And this is going to alarm some Federalists, because France is then going to want us to help them in their revolution, like they helped us in ours. They want to put democracy in place in France. So we're going to be pulled in two different directions. One, we help France. We want to support democracy. They're our ally. We should help them. The other direction is Great Britain. Great Britain does not want the French Revolution to happen. It hurts them. It threatens their trade. They are very interested in keeping France a monarchy. So we could help Great Britain, and we could oppose France in the Revolution. And that would help us because we need to be able to trade with Great Britain. It's very important for our economy. So Jefferson, being an adamant supporter of France and an adamant supporter of the French Revolution, he actually helped Marquis Lafayette write the French version of the Declaration of Independence when he was in Paris serving as our ambassador to France. He very much wants us to be helping the French Revolution. It makes sense to him. It's loyal. It's the right thing to do. The cause of France is the cause of America. Vive la France. That's what we should be doing. But on the other side, Alexander Hamilton is like, no. The same way Jefferson feels about France, that's how Hamilton feels about Great Britain. He thinks Great Britain has the money. That's who we need to be trading with. Our focus needs to be economics. We shouldn't worry about loyalty as much. We signed these treaties, with the king, and where's the king now? He's dead. So we shouldn't have to follow these treaties. We should be supporting Great Britain. Now, ultimately, what George Washington is going to choose is neither side. We want to be neutral. So in April of 1793, he's going to issue his Neutrality Proclamation. And what this says is that the United States is going to pursue friendly conduct towards all of these countries. We're friends with everyone. Now, Democratic Republicans are going to be very critical of this. They really are upset that Washington isn't willing to support France in their revolution. Our ambassador from France at the time was a guy named Edmond Genet, and he actually starts trying to recruit Americans to join him in helping fight the French Revolution after Washington issues his Neutrality Proclamation, and Washington fires him because that's a violation of our neutrality. All of this is sort of the last straw for Jefferson. No one's listening to him. Foreign affairs are literally his job. He's the Secretary of State, and Washington isn't taking his advice, so he feels like he shouldn't even be there to give his advice. So ultimately, Thomas Jefferson decides to resign and return to his home at Monticello in Virginia, and go back to his life before politics. Now, we know eventually he'll come back, and he'll be our next vice president and then the president after that. But for now, he's going to be taking a brief break from politics, and he's going to be replaced by John Jay as our next Secretary of State.